For this task, the objective was to use the if that then this service to send a trigger when it receives an event that indicates that light is on a garden and light is off the garden. So in absence of a actual light sensor, I've decided to mock the values. So I'll just walk through the solution. Now, on the actual Argon device, I'm not using any components because I don't actually have that light sensor, but I am using the built-in LED to indicate when event is published. So I'll move on to the code. So first of all, on my code, it is quite simple. So it just uses a function to mock the sunlight rise and fall. So this function here just receives an integer and just increases the value until it rises to the value of 40, and then it resets the value. And the purpose of that was just to provide some kind of indication that the light is kind of rising and then it falls again, instead of providing a random value. The code then just has a loop, and it just publishes that sunlight value and then repeats again. Now I've put a delay there of about 10 seconds just because I found that smaller values didn't or resulted in the data or the triggered events not arriving in sequence. If I move on to the particle events, I can see that events have been triggered. So essentially what it does is it increases from 0 to 40 and then resets again. And so that event name is called sunlight. And if I was to click on here, it is essentially just an event called sunlight, which contains an integer value. Now, if I move on to the triggers, I'm on the if that then this dashboard, and what I've created is two applets which are listening to the events from the Argon device, and one is to send a notification that sunlight is off the garden, and the other is to send a notification sunlight is on the garden. So I'll just click on one of them because they are essentially the same, other than the values that they are listening to. So I go to edit to view its settings. Now I can see that I've set the trigger up to listen to a particle, to the particle device. It's listening for a new event published. The name of that event is sunlight. That's what's published by the Argon device. Now the value it's listening for in this case is 10. So when it receives a value of 10, it's going to publish an event to indicate that sunlight is now on the garden. So if I scroll down to actions, the action here is to send an email. The subject is sunlight is on your garden. And in the body of the email, I've just included sunlight is on your garden and just the device name, event contents, and created at time. Now the other applet is identical, except for the value. Instead of a 10, it has 30, and that will indicate that sunlight is off the garden. Now I'm using my email address as notification. So if I then move on to my email, I can see that I've received quite a few notifications. And just to give an example, this first one here is to indicate sunlight is on your garden. So if I click on that, the subject is sunlight is on your garden. The body of the email is sunlight is on your garden, Argon device published on this date. The next notification is sunlight is off your garden. And again, it's a very similar message, other than to indicate that the sunlight is off the garden now. So that is the objective of the task. And one thing I did find is when I try to increase the frequency in the code, for example, I have the delay here of about 10 seconds. Smaller values would, for example, of 1 second would result in the if that then this service send in events or email notifications out of sequence. So what I found was that I would receive 2 emails simultaneously at the same time to indicate that the device had sent a message about the sunlight not being on the garden and the sunlight being off the garden simultaneously. So I found I had to increase the times so you provide these notifications in sequence. Thanks for listening.